Although I'm very grateful and thankful for everything that the Trump family has sacrificed, everything Eric Trump himself has sacrificed, everything Trump has sacrificed for the sake of this nation, and trying to fix a lot of the problems. And I'm grateful for many of the things he's done this year. At the same time, I would say as a Christian, this is a very critical moment in the culture of this nation. It's like right now, we need to stand up when you say, no, that's not true. And he's missing it. He's missing the truth of Christianity, and he's actually promoting something that's anti-Christian, a works-based religion. And here's the third thing that he says that I didn't like. He said,
normally, whenever I lead a discussion, it gets kind of intense, but this one we're going to take a little bit easy, and we're just going to talk about Eric Trump's new book called Under Siege, just released a few days ago. It's essentially a memoir, but it's not like his entire life memoir. It's more from the 2016 political era up to about now. And what's making it hit the headlines right now is that he really didn't hold back. He put in details that I had never actually heard from any other source about some of the things that happened in the courtrooms and how things went down, and just how dirty some of this stuff was that happened to not only President Trump when he wasn't president, and when he was, and then when he wasn't again, but to Eric Trump specifically. So I thought that was interesting that he stayed out of the limelight well enough that it was hard to tell that he actually got it handed to him real hard. So he made that it's a crazy story. So this book released on Charlie Kirk's birthday, which also was the same day that Donald Trump awarded the Medal of Freedom to Charlie Kirk / his wife, and also the last day of the Hebrew festivals, which I thought all of that was really interesting, but it's probably just coincidence, and that's not my goal with talking about it. I just thought it was a fun thing to point out how this all lines up, because this is an expose.
And Eric Trump has pointed that out as well. He also pointed out about the same time that the hostages were released. And he pointed out the fact that all these things kind of like happened at the same time. Yeah.
So this whole book essentially is explaining how we had a weaponization of the legal system against Trump. And like, when you think it was bad, you actually can't imagine how bad it was compared to like what he actually says in this. And one of the biggest stories that stood out to me in the book was about Letitia James, the Attorney General. Are you familiar with her and what she did? Yeah, I can tell by the smile on Ryan's face.
Yeah.
So she ran her campaign even before she was Attorney General, basically on the premise of to get Trump. And he breaks down in the book exactly how that went down, and it is crazy. She said, "I will sue Donald Trump every day if I have to, publicly, multiple times." She said all kinds of things like that. That this was her whole campaign, was to take down Donald Trump, and she was running for Attorney General, so she's not supposed to be, personally involved in things like that. It's what is it? Imagine any other prosecutor saying that about a private citizen before any evidence is presented. It would be disbarment territory, yet no one stepped in. Nobody stopped her. She should have been disbarred immediately, and they just let her do this. And he talks about all that. So he walks in this, he walks through the depositions, the subpoenas, the endless fishing expeditions. And it's insane seeing what they went through. And one of the biggest takeaways for me is, as I was reading through this, I couldn't help but keep thinking, I'm an empathetic person, so I put myself in the shoes, especially if it's a book, and I'm reading from that person's perspective. The amount of, I don't know what you call it, but it really was a form of terrorism that was put on the Trump family. I don't know if I could have withstood that. And I don't know if anybody really could have withstood it. And I honestly don't think that the Trump family would have been able to withstand that if it wasn't for the divine providence of God being behind them and them needing to be in the positions that they are in. There's clearly a spiritual hand at work here, because there's just no way what they went through.
And Eric said the same thing recently. He said, I've seen the hand of God on him since day one. And that's the only way he was able to make it through.
Wow.
which I think is interesting that, that he credits God with essentially protecting their family and leading Trump. Very interesting.
Yeah, it is. So what's your guys' gut reactions on him putting this expose out and how people are going to respond to it?
I'll say my gut reaction is I want to read it. I don't know if I'm going to get around to reading it just because I don't read those kind of books very often, but I want to. I think it would be very, very entertaining and interesting to see. Entertaining in the sense of like learning new information about what was going on while we were watching it, firsthand. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if I could stomach some of the stuff in the book, just learning like the details of it. But because it is crazy, like how it seems like there was a concerted effort from so many different groups around the country to stop Trump, sometimes for reasons that they could clarify and distinguish, and other times for seemingly non-existent reasons, so it's very, very strange time in history.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic to see this book because we all recognize the unusualness of their attacks against Trump, and we saw it all from the outside, and this seems like it's bringing more details from behind the scenes to show like it's 1,000 times worse than what you even understood. And I think that it also, and I haven't read the book, I probably will read this, or at least get it and put it on my shelf and thumb through it. But the just to get the general idea of it. But I think that it also shows the providence of God, like God's hand on, like you said, on this family. And I'm glad to see that they're giving glory to God for that. And I think that this is critical. I mean, this needs to be chronicled. This situation needs to be chronicled for the history books, and when they're going to be rewriting it, and because we know what these mainstream media outlets are saying, and they're covering things up and all this, and ignoring the fact that Letitia, she's actually being indicted. Her own actions got her into the problem that she's in. I want to push back a little bit, Ryan. I'll let you finish, but I want to push back against some of that a little bit. And I think there's some details surrounding like Eric's stance that I think we need to try to break down. Well, and that's fine. And I think it's important to get into the details and to discuss some of this. But for me, the overarching big narrative needs to be told of, okay, this happened on a big level picture. Here's some of the details, then the receipts to demonstrate that. Yes, and that is true. It's undeniable. Okay, now let's talk about let's unpack that suitcase a little bit. And I'm sure we'll find some things in there that are not what we would like. But at the same time, my overarching take is that, this needed to be chronicled. And I think I'm glad to see that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There's I want to point out one thing, and then there's a whole nother subject that we can talk about, and this is what Troy's referencing, so we'll get into that. But I want to say that the biggest theme that I picked up on, actually, that he didn't probably even intend, maybe did a little bit, but is the idea of projection. And I feel like a broken record because I say that all the time, but it's true, and it's almost hilarious how, specifically with Letitia James, everything that she was trying to throw at the Trumps, she was doing, and the people around her were doing. And so they're just showing their hand. And I got a little bullet point list of what you referenced, Ryan. October 9th, 2025, a federal grand jury in Virginia indicted Letitia James on 2 counts, bank fraud and making false statements to a financial institution. Similar things that they were putting on Eric Trump specifically. The charges relate to her 2020 purchase of a property in Norfolk, Virginia, which prosecutors claim she misrepresented as her secondary residence in her mortgage applications while allegedly using it as an investment rental property. The U.S. Attorney's Office in the Eastern District of Virginia formally announced the indictment, stating that the charges reflect intentional criminal acts and a breach of public trust. And of course, she denied any wrongdoing, called the accusations politically motivated, and characterized them as retaliatory. Isn't that hilarious? Kind of funny.
Victor Davis Hanson says Letitia James is a victim of her own actions. So she's not a victim of political attack. It's a victim of her own actions.
For everything she said the Trumps did that they didn't actually do, she was doing. And it's almost kind of like, well, that was dumb. Did you not realize that you were just going to, like, it's the meme where you put the bar in your own spokes of the tire, of the bicycle.
I think this is classic on the left, is that they get over their skis a little bit. They get overconfident, and then they just go all in on these things because maybe they think they're going to be protected, or maybe they're a little bit naive, or just disconnected. I don't know, but I'm grateful to see when the justice system actually does do right. But this one's got to get across the finish line, of course. But
the arrogance is just insane, because it's like they had them down, like they had hundreds of millions of dollars of fines and fees and stuff coming at the Trumps, and it looked like they were going to just bury them. And so I'm sure that it comes from a lot of that arrogance of just
they thought for sure they were going to win. They thought, with the amount they threw everything in the kitchen sink at Trump.
And it certainly looked like
basically they're like, we cannot allow this to happen, so we're going to play every card we have, we're going to throw every resource that we have. And it is insane. It's honestly just dramatic and a crazy story that it in the end failed, which is astounding. And I think obviously I think it's for our better, which is crazy to say, because I'm not somebody that would ever be like, I think Trump is the greatest, most perfectest, bestest person that's ever existed. Like you can't say that about really anybody, but I definitely wouldn't say it about Trump. But it's crazy because it's like they have made him a figure because they came out against him so difficult, and it showed the realities of the dynamics of power in the United States, where it stripped off the veneer where we were all being lied to and saying, we live in a fair and free democracy where everybody's ideas get to be heard, and it's just whatever the people want. And then it's like, when the people wanted a change, wanted something new, when the people backed Trump, it was like gloves came off. It's like, no, this is not allowed. You cannot have this. We're going to save democracy by undermining the very ideas that it was built on. We're going to save democracy by killing it, essentially. And that's what occurred, and it made Trump more than he ever would have been, because it became the hill that everyone that's even slightly politically interested was going to die on, one side or the other. Either Trump is a dictator and we have to die on this hill to keep him out of office, or Trump is not a dictator, and suddenly this force that's been growing in the United States for like the last 100 years has now been revealed to us, and we're like, well, we have to do something about this. And that's been the story. So it's thrown him into the limelight in a way that he never would have, made him a historical figure that he wouldn't have been if they didn't hate him as much as they hated him. So it's absolutely crazy. But I'm sure we need to move on to the stance that Eric took that you guys are talking about, because I'm really interested in that.
I listened to the interview, and I have a good feeling I know what Troy's going to say, so I'm going to let you take it away, Troy, because I'm curious.
Well,
I wrote down
what happened was, Eric Trump's been on his book podcast tour, and so he got on the Benny Johnson show, and Benny Johnson referenced Trump's recent remarks about heaven. So if y'all remember, a couple of months ago, he was interviewed and asked about, he said, I'm trying to make it to heaven. That's why I'm working so hard to make all these peace deals. And people took different responses to that. And some people thought he was serious. Some people thought he might not be so serious. He might have been joking. And so somebody re-asked that question this week, and Trump's response is like, yeah, I don't know. He's like, I'm not so sure that I'm heaven bound. He was like, I don't know if I'm going to make it, type of thing. That was his response. And again, some people have taken that seriously. Some people have not. But Benny ended up asking Eric what he thought about it. And so Eric, I just want to bring up three problems that I have with Eric's response. So the first two problems are the way he describes how you get to heaven, and the way he describes Christianity. And the third response is just a statement he made. And so the first thing he says is he's like, well, he talks about his father potentially making it to heaven. And he describes everything that Trump has done this year, all the peace deals, brokering peace in the Middle East, potentially all these different places around the world. And then he also describes how Trump is slowing down a lot of other people from going to heaven, meaning like he's keeping a lot of people around the world from dying, right? That's what he's saying. And he said they'll spend more time on this earth talking about the people that Trump has kept from dying. And he said, and that in itself will get my father to heaven. So that was his first statement, was that it was what Trump was doing this year is going to get him to heaven. His second statement about why he's going to make it to heaven is he was offering proof for why Trump's going to heaven. And the proof was one of the major things was he said he wouldn't have survived the assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania, if he weren't heaven bound. And then he also said he wouldn't have survived many other things as well, right? But that was the main thing. He was saying this is proof. The fact that he survived that is proof that God protected him, and God would have only he was implying God would have only protected him if he was heaven bound, which
Right.
obviously we know is not the case. If you look at all the martyrs throughout church history, is like God doesn't always step in and stop. I mean, just look at the Charlie Kirk situation. Like if you judge it by that lens itself, even culturally, the standard is not that he's missing the mark, right? But I would say as a Christian, this is something that although I'm very grateful and thankful for everything that the Trump family has sacrificed, everything Eric Trump himself has sacrificed, everything Trump has sacrificed for the sake of this nation, and trying to fix a lot of the problems. And I'm grateful for the things he's done, many of the things he's done this year, and trying to bring peace to a lot of situations around the world. At the same time, I would say as a Christian, this is a very critical moment in the culture of this nation and for those watching from around the world, what's happening in the United States, where Christians who know the truth of the gospel and know what Christianity is actually based on. It's not based on our works. It's not based on how good we are. It's not based on promoting peace. It's not based on what we've done or how many people we've saved. It's only based on what Jesus has done on the cross. It's like right now we need to stand up when you say, no, that's not true. And he's missing it. He's missing the truth of Christianity, and he's actually promoting something that's anti-Christian, which is a works-based religion. And if you're looking at Orthodox Christianity says, no, we are saved and we get to go to heaven because Jesus died for us, and we've put our trust in him, our faith in him, and we believed in him. And here's the third thing that he says that I didn't like. He said, we're saving Christianity, we're saving God, we're saving the family unit, we're saving this nation. I think in some senses, he's right, because they are promoting Christianity. They're promoting God. We see more, even Benny himself said, we have a return of people going to church. We have a return of people valuing their children in society, and these things. It's like there is a return to some of these Christian values, yes, and Christian practices, yes. So in that sense, they are promoting Christianity and protecting it, politically speaking and culturally speaking. They're protecting religious freedoms, but to say we're saving Christianity and we're saving God is flipping the script, because the truth is God came to save humanity, not the other way around. So and Christianity is saving the world, not the world is not saving Christianity. So that would be my comment. And I would say as a Christian, I feel very strongly that I need to clearly define what Orthodox Christianity looks like and what it's not.
What gets you to heaven and what doesn't get you to heaven.
Well, I would say I like the term biblical Christianity, because we have cultural Christianity, which is what I think they're kind of talking about, which is this idea of behavior modification and code of conduct and that sort of stuff. And it's not about a real surrendered life to Jesus Christ, who is the reason we would be heaven bound. That's pretty disappointing to see such an explicit, ridiculous, unbiblical thing that was said. I think from the saving Christianity, saving God, saving that to me seems more of like a characterization. I mean, it's from a theological standpoint, that's ridiculous. But from me, from the standpoint of a cultural movement of what they're representing in the culture and in the marketplace and in those places, like, okay, I see what they're saying. Like you said, they're moving it that direction and taking actions that do that. But no, from a actual saving, like there's no saving needed. There's no God is sovereign over everything.
As some evidence that Christians are standing up and pushing back, Benny has already taken down that video off of X. He's left it up on YouTube, but he's taken it down because of pushback from Christians on X saying, Benny, you should have said, Benny, if you know the truth, you said something in that moment.
That's a lesson I learned too in doing interviews, and my wife watching back interviews that I did, and she's like, you need to put, if somebody says something and you're not pushing back and it's a mischaracterization, like you are in agreement, you're come off as you're in agreement and you don't got an issue with that. And so I've learned my lesson, and he should already know that lesson for sure.
Yeah. I think that's just an example. Like the Trumps in general have been kind of just a representation of the country, unfortunately. And we're considered a Christian nation, but it's like it's an American Christian is what is generally referred to. It's like, are we really Christians, or do we just have a very weak theology? And that's just what Christian. That is. It's very weak theology, and Eric Trump is no theologian, that's for sure. And I'm not sure he's even really thought a whole lot about it. So I think he just is simply representing the common average American Christian in that sense. And that needs to be addressed. and it needs to be changed. And hopefully we can do that. But it starts with helping people like Eric Trump to understand that, because if he can understand that, he's got a lot of influence, and then he can do better, I guess, is the only way to say it. But yeah.
That's a good way to characterize, I think, what took place.
I'm total agreement with you, Doug. I think what we're getting into, of course, is the difference between these the dynamic of like the spiritual side of Christianity versus the cultural side of Christianity, because everybody is recognizing, everybody that's any little bit center or right as far as cultural or political goes, everyone's recognizing the collapse and the falling apart of society. You see it. You see this like spiritual corruption and this cultural corruption. You see the meaning and the ability for people to have, functioning families and towns and societies. You see it all come crumbling down and falling apart. And so it's made people are desperate for something, and it's made a ignition of cultural Christianity, of people like we need faith and God and family. We need people to be dedicated to something and disciplined and be able to not just give into their hedonistic desires and all these kinds of things. And you've seen an explosion of that recently. And I think in general, that's great. I think it's great culturally. I think it's great politically. I think it has, I think that in some ways that is the way that Christianity is the salt and light to the world, is that it gives culture those kinds of tools that it doesn't have, without, regardless. And so we're getting into the dynamic here of the actual like deep spiritual side of Christianity that goes into like the Bible and theology and the truth of Jesus Christ as God and as Savior, and as what does it mean? What does that mean? And what does that mean for me personally? It's like, well, I have to give my life to Christ. I need forgiveness of sins. I need, personal transformation. All that, as we know, only comes through Christ. And that's different from versus I'm a political figure, or I'm just a person on the right and I want my country to be more stable and be more wholesome. And so I want to push like, everybody, let's return to going to church on Sundays, and let's return to having some Christian morals and stuff like that. And so I do think it is important. Like I'm somebody that I can say that I can comfortably stand in the gap between those two things and say, I want to see both happen. And I'm okay with politicians paying a little bit of lip service to Christianity if it means an encouragement of young people to like do good things and not just live hedonistic lives. But at the end of the day, it's like people do need to draw the distinction at some point and say, hey, there's actually something deeper to Christianity that's not just behavior modification, like you said. It's not just a cultural veneer, but it's actually, you either are following Christ and you've been made new, or you're still dead and you need to be made new in Christ. And that's the spiritual aspect that has to be presented. So
a couple of things on that. I would say, yes, it's deep, but that's the basic introduction, surface level. If you don't get that, nothing else matters. Jesus Christ. So that I would not call, it is a deep spiritual truth, but it is a basic spiritual truth. It's like, it's deep enough an elephant can wade in it, but a kid can also safely swim in it. The other thing I would say is I don't like politicians giving a lip service, and maybe we'll just disagree on what lip service is, and that's why I have the caveat. For me, if a politician can say what they want to say, but they need to represent with their actions, not just their words, the Christian biblical worldview and the Christian take on this nation and what we need and representing people and all that. Because we have too many politicians who for too long have just done lip service, and then they get into office and they forget about any biblical interest at all whatsoever. And so, but I understand the point you're making is it drives culture when they do say these things. It does drive culture. Well, then we need to have that culture drive and then push back on the politicians to hold them accountable to hold up those biblical standards.
Just to clarify a little bit, I'm not so sure you could consider Eric Trump specifically a politician. He's obviously in politics, but he's not technically...
No, I wouldn't say he's a politician at all. No,
Right. So he has a different platform, and so that it just kind of makes it a little bit different, I think.
I should say political thought leaders.
Or influencer. Like he is an influencer too.
That's one of the things he announced when he released his book too, that he as soon as President Trump won last year, the first thing he did was lean over to him and say, "I'm getting out of politics as soon as I can."
Yeah, because he was like
thrown in. Getting out of politics?
Eric Trump. He leaned over to his dad and said, as soon as he found out that he won, he was like, "Hey, I'm gonna try to take a break from politics if I can." So
I don't blame him.
He said maybe sometime in the future he'll go back into it, but he also pointed the finger to some other people in the Trump family, saying I think they're going to go really far, you know, like, so maybe he's hoping someone else will pick up the torch.
I don't know. I think
We'll
maybe
see.
he might be the one who might need to. It's always the one, like the person who might do the best job is the one who doesn't want to do it, you know, in that kind of way. Like maybe maybe he would be better for it.
That was President Trump, you know, from the
For
start.
sure, yeah.
You know, he's like, somebody needs to do this. I'm the chosen one. I got to do it.
I'm the chosen one.
Somebody needs to do it.
Yeah,
somebody had to do it.
And he's got the experience now. This was quite the training field for him. He would be a pretty good candidate, but I think it'd be awesome to see a little bit of a correction of his theology before then. That'd be really great. And also, I think it would be really good to hear a little bit more about what he meant by saving God, because I think I understand what he was getting at when he was saying that, but he was trying to say it so fast that I was like, you can't just throw something out like that and not then further explain it. There's a message there, and it needs to be reworked, you know?
I think probably people say things off the cuff and maybe they wouldn't defend him 100% later. But I would say I am happy that we are having a conversation about the theological or not theological statements of people leading our nation. I think that is fantastic because they're talking about it, and we can have that conversation, like you said, and that is helping drive culture. And so certainly would never characterize things the way that he said them, but I'm glad that we at least can talk about them, and that's happening at the higher level discussion.
Yeah, absolutely.